Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
But you know, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times. One only remembers to turn on the light.
It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
The ones that love us never really leave us.
Working hard is important, but there's something that matters: believing in yourself. If they can do it, why not us?
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Act 2, Scene 11 through 15 of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. We have Elizabeth with us.
Hello everyone.
And we have Jenn back on.
Hey guys. Woo!
So there is a specific reason we have Jenn on for this one. There is a character that you might want to have some commentary on.
I'm honored.
Yeah. We start with Act 2, Scene 11, and we are in Hogwarts in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. As Albus enters the classroom, we notice that something has changed once again. Hermione is teaching the class. By the way, it's a Patronus Charms Day today, which I think is an interesting class to kind of dive in on. First of all, I guess, before we even get into what Hermione is like as a teacher here, do we think Hermione would be, our normal Hermione, do you think she would be a good Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher?
It's an interesting question considering she said that was the only subject that Harry outperformed her on. But I do think she would be fine with it.
I think she would be competent. I don't think it would be her best subject to teach.
That was going to be my next question. What subject would you pick her for?
Transfiguration.
Ooh, okay.
That would be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one. We don't get to see too much of her interactions with some of the more advanced subjects. It would have been interesting to see her with, like, arithmancy, for example.
Like ancient runes, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, especially because in her adult life, I think Wizarding World said that she became more famous for, like, translating the original story of the Three Brothers, right? Like, from the original runes and, like, all the tales of the Beetle the Bard. Mm-hmm. So, like, she'd have the resume for it, you know?
Well, she'd probably be competent in those subjects that you guys mentioned. I think the only answer here is charms, just based on the Wingardium Leviosa comment.
You know what? If she were a teacher, though, if ever they needed a sub for flying lessons, they would be like, no.
Also, it is interesting, and I'm just thinking about this now. The Patronus charm is a charm. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So does it get covered in Charms class as well? Or does it only get covered in Defense Against the Dark Arts because of its obvious use?
Maybe it would be covered in your 7th year. And then it'd be like, well, it applies in Defense Against the Dark Arts. It's like a cross-curricular kind of thing.
I would go more that it belongs in Defense Against the Dark Arts. I get that they take Charms for an extended period of time, but Charms is so wide. Mm-hmm. So I almost feel like because it's fairly specific to really one of the only times you're going to be using the Patronus is to do something that's Defense Against the Dark Arts, I would argue it would be more suited to be under Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Our big theme throughout this entire podcast has been how the wizards need therapy. I feel like this would be such a good therapy tool in general. Just teach people how to use the Patronus. Because you have to come up with a happy enough thought to create it. So it'd be like, okay, well, you're in your darkness, in your depression. I know, like, literally she created this based off of real life depression. But it would be interesting to see wizards using this charm in, like, a therapeutic way. Yeah. And everyone's problems could be solved.
I just love the idea of a spell being so pivotal to two different branches of magic. It's just a really cool kind of centerpiece.
Yeah.
So, as Albus walks in and notices Hermione, he is seemingly still very unaware of the changes that have seemed to manifest from all of his actions. And the other students in the class are not very kind to Albus, which I guess supports his view of the world. Like, oh, nothing's really changed, I guess. I'm still kind of an outcast.
Oh.
You would still think by now he would have realized something is different, because Ron just said he was married to Padma, has a whole different child, and he was just like, what's happening? You think it'd be like, oh, things are different now.
Yeah, it's stunning that he would think that that might be the only real change. And by the way, he seems to be okay with that. He's like, oh yeah, that's totally, that change is okay. But then
it's not upsetting enough to be like, oh, we messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Polly Chapman and Jan Fredericks have some comments for Albus. Polly says, well, Albus hates being in Gryffindor, so you taking points away from Albus really just hurts the entire house, and it's not really punishing Albus. Because as Albus continues to pester Hermione about why Hermione's there, why is she doing this, why are you so mean? He actually calls her mean out loud. And she subsequently takes points and more points and more points, which would further alienate him from his housemates. Jan Fredericks eventually threatens Albus to sit down, which also doesn't get points taken away from him. Hermione was like, yeah, he's got a point. Sit down.
He lost 70 points in total. That's
a lot.
Sorry, 80 points in total. That's
a lot.
How much it was.
For just being a little...
Not snarky.
Not even snarky. It was more just ignorant. Which I guess would be a Hermione pet peeve of just like, stop being stupid, sit down, and let's get to class.
Well, so do you guys read this as... I mean, she's basically turned into Snape.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. She has certainly become Snape-like.
I mean, she loves school so much. You would think that she would also be excited to inspire students to learn new things or whatever. But it's like she's so jaded to teaching because everyone around her is just too stupid for her, like the way Snape was. And she said, I mean, she was like, when Albus asked what she's doing here, she said, I'm teaching for my sins. And was just like, ugh, this place. I hate being there. Everyone's so stupid and you're just a disappointing bunch and nobody knows anything. And just like, wow, okay. But I could see someone who was so bright in school being upset that the other students are not rising up to that level that they're at and they're not being challenged in like the educational sense. So I could see her being jaded, but it just seems very odd.
She specifically asks about Patronus, and when no one raises their hand or attempts to answer the question, she calls the class disappointing. And then what I find interesting is, because so often and throughout all of the other books, we kind of get this like jaded point of view of Snape, for example. Mm-hmm. We see Snape through Harry's eyes. Mm-hmm. So we can make the argument that, well, Harry might be a little biased against Snape, so we're seeing it through his eyes. So maybe Snape's not like that bad. He's just bad, but it's getting amped up a bit. Mm-hmm. Here, the editor, like the narrator, comes in and is like, nah, she's quite mean.
Yeah.
So we get like the voice of God essentially being like, no, guys.
Yep.
She's mean. Like she's coming across real bad. So it's just interesting that they had to specifically note that.
And to prove that, yes, I am mean. Because Albus was like, legit. You're not this mean. He's like, yes, I am. 20 points from Gryffindor. Let me take more off.
Albus doubles down on all of this by mentioning Rose. And then suddenly realizes, oh wait, since her and Ron aren't together, that would mean Rose doesn't even exist. Yeah, that's what that means.
I love that he accidentally said that out loud.
Yes, it's a weird thought to have out loud. But it's a funny comment.
That's a very funny comment.
Hermione continues with her Patronus lesson.
Her lesson on Patronus was interesting, though, because she called it a gift of light that can protect yourself against the world, which in some of our cases seems like a necessity sooner rather than later. And I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be like a snarky, Albus, you're getting yourself into trouble, so you're going to need it sooner rather than later, or if we were trying to foreshadow, Bane just told Harry that Albus is surrounded by dark clouds, So maybe he needs the gift of light soon because, like, you know, that's closing in.
Being the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, do you think she's been clued in to all the stuff that Harry's told McGonagall?
I would wonder, in this timeline, is Harry as good as friends with Ron as he is with Hermione?
That was exactly the question I was going to ask.
Yeah.
We don't know the relationship between Harry and Hermione in this timeline.
I would assume since the directive was to keep Albus and Scorpius separate, that directive would have gone through McGonagall and then filtered down to all of the staff.
It is interesting. I mean, we talked about this last time, how with the ripples of time seem to be small ripples at first that expand into bigger and bigger ripples. So it's hard to tell what was true in the first timeline is still true in this timeline and kind of like bled through and still is having the same effect versus what happened in the first timeline that is no longer true for this timeline. So we don't know if like the same stuff that Hermione had that whole meeting about, like with Harry's dreams and stuff, like in this timeline, did Harry have these bad dreams that he then told Hermione about to then told the public or the ministry about? So it's hard to answer that question, I guess.
It seems like they're just implicating that the biggest change to Hermione's life is that she's not with Ron. And I'm assuming the artistic thought or process behind that is Ron brings a certain joy and lightheartedness to Hermione. It kind of balances out her more studious or more serious or more aggressive tones, for lack of a better term. And Ron balances her out. You know, we get that whole Hermione early on in her academic career of like, we could die or worse, expelled. Like, there's that Hermione, and without Ron, that Hermione just continues on in that timeline, that way of thinking. And I think that what they're trying to do here is show you that you take Ron away from Hermione, or Hermione away from Ron, too, because you could flip it. And this is kind of the dynamic that you're getting. If the change happened at the Triwizard Tournament, then something there would have had to flip. Because she was very caring about Harry in that scene where we get Albus accidentally speaking to Hermione. Mm-hmm. So she was kind and worried about him there. And then clearly that happened and stuff had to change at that point. It's interesting to see a different version of Hermione. I think it's kind of a cool... It's almost like you're getting... I think you mentioned this once before, Jen, of like a fan fiction. Like you're kind of seeing like what a fan fiction version of Hermione might be.
Yep.
Well, then you're getting like the antithesis of each character. Like Ron is no longer a joker who is like willing to stand up for what he thinks is right. Hermione is no longer a happy person who enjoys studying. Harry is no longer a person who is trying to like go out of his way to like save people. It's more like, I'm going to imprison people, at least his son, for the sake of like what he thinks is best, and what he thinks is best because he's not even trying to get input from anyone else.
I don't know. I almost want to say this is almost like an extreme version of each character, where Hermione goes that hyper aggressive student to the max, and now she's like that as a teacher, where it's like mean, really adverse reactions to stupidity or ignorance or anything. Like it's like beginning Hermione, but like amped to like 1,000. And Harry, it's like, hey, I've been right all the time, every time. Therefore, I am never wrong. This is how I'm going to deal with it. And then Ron is like the forgotten child, and he just kind of becomes like a defeated version.
They all helped each other grow in the original timeline. And it's that absence of having other people balance you out and having other people help you grow into a specific person. So it is kind of like in this isolated environment, what would they have become if they didn't have the influence of their friends?
Mm-hmm. I want to see what that alternate timeline played out as. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, Albus makes this change. Let's stick with that timeline for a little bit and see how those ripples affected through their next 3 years. So, admittedly, I think we've delved a little bit more into the Hermione as a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher and the trio as like what might have happened in this alt universe a little bit more than I have anticipated. So let's get to what really is important in this episode. Staircases.
Stairs.
Gotta love a good staircase.
We gotta love the staircases. And this next scene, Act 2, Scene 12, is Hogwarts staircases. And what do we get in this? Staircases. That's literally all we get. We get a wonderful staircase dance with Albus and Scorpius looking for each other. They find each other, but part wordlessly, both clearly unhappy.
This was the scene you brought me on for.
This was it. I needed your opinions on stairs.
This scene is so dramatic and angsty, and I love it. Because I remember watching it when we went to see the play, and it was like, here's the two staircases being moved all around the stage, and they look into one direction, and they miss the other, and they look the other way, and the other misses each other, and then they both are on the opposite sides of the stage, and they see each other, and they like reach out as if they're going to touch each other, almost like a love scene, and then they're like, we can't, and then they like go their separate ways, and it's like the drama is so much. It's so funny to me.
So Jen, I want your in-depth, detailed analysis on staircases. Go.
I'm pro staircases.
You're pro. Whoa! I did not expect that take from you. That's a hot take.
Hot
You're pro
take.
stairs.
I'm pro stairs.
Wow.
I know.
I'm more of an escalator guy.
I know we're teasing, but I did enjoy a little bit of the scene.
Okay. Laughter and jokes aside. First of all, that was literally the scene. There is no more to that scene.
No, there's not.
I actually like it, though.
It hints at the deeper relationship the two are having and how hard it is for them to not be able to talk to each other.
Also, we joke about the staircase dance that happens, but if we remember, a key feature of Hogwarts is that the staircases do move.
Yeah.
No, I actually thought that this was a very clever way of using the staircases moving in Hogwarts to actually convey the very melodramatic scene of them longingly staring at each other. It does. It works.
Yeah.
It really
It does,
It's
yeah.
melodramatic, but
The only
it's good.
thing it makes me wonder is why doesn't Albus try to do some more roundabout way of contacting Scorpius?
Or vice versa.
Well, yeah, because it's like obvious by now they have realized, oh, history has changed. And I know that Harry has threatened Albus about, like, talking to Scorpius, and he's going to start researching into Scorpius's background and all that fun stuff. There's lots of threats in the air. So I understand why he's like, I don't want to make life difficult for Scorpius or for myself, so I'm just going to keep avoiding him. But it's like, send him an owl or something. Like, do something. Give a message to Ponju if you want, and have Ponju go talk to Scorpius.
Oh, no, you can't trust Ponju.
Do something.
From what Ron said, you can't trust that kid.
Well, do something just so
He
that
will out you in a second,
so
okay?
at least, like, someone can know. Because otherwise, I mean, they're just going to continue living in the second timeline, and clearly neither of them are happy, and clearly the Golden Trio is not happy, so...
No, I mean, you make a great point in that you have clearly recognized that the world has changed, and by an increasingly alarming factor. You know, it's getting worse and worse and worse the more you really expand your worldview. The further you go out, the worse it's getting. How do you not reach out to the only other person that you know is going through the same thing as you? It's Hogwarts. I know people are watching out for you. There's got to be a way. If anything we've learned from the Golden Trio throughout 7 years is there's a way to get together.
Do you think Harry ever told them about the room requirement? Like, I know the outcome of the room is questionable because they burned it. But if that still existed, that doesn't show up on the Marauders map. So they could be like, secret meetings and the room requirement.
This is where there really holds them back, not having lockers, so you can't just, like, slip notes. So what is the Hogwarts equivalent of passing notes, then?
I think it's kind of what we see actually in one of the movies. I can't remember which movie off the top of my head. But you literally see, I think it's Draco draws a doodle of Harry getting, like, I think it's Prisoner of Azkaban, getting shocked by lightning on a broomstick. And literally, like, folds it up into a paper airplane, but then charms the plane to literally fly around to
My
Harry.
students would love that.
So I think it's just like a charmed paper airplane.
Why can't they do that?
Or maybe, since he is a Potter, maybe Albus also knows parcel tongue. We could go into the Chamber of Secrets. I'm sure Harry talked about it. Everyone knows where the entrance is now.
Let's go find the Myrtle's bathroom. That's cleared out always. No one wants to go in there.
She could commiserate with them. Be like, life is miserable. Death is also miserable. Although maybe in this timeline, she's actually having a good old time. Maybe she didn't die.
Oh, I hope so. She deserves a good time.
That was so genuine. That was lovely. You had real concern there.
Bad for her.
That's wonderful.
It is interesting though, because it does highlight how Albus and Harry are just two very, very different people. Even though Albus is Harry's son, like they do not have in this moment. Harry as a student was always very headstrong, was always very determined. He was going to do things no matter what. And then you've got Albus, who is too scared to.
He's accepting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice.
I think you're right. I think it does clearly show a very stark difference between Albus Severus and his father. That scene ends. I can't believe we talked for a while on just a one-page scene about staircases, but here we go. Oh, wait, we didn't get your opinion. Staircase, yay or nay? Elizabeth?
I could take them. Not if they're like the spiral staircases. I don't really love those, but a regular staircase is fine. A grand staircase is very cool.
Yep.
But those spiral staircases, I could pass on.
If you have an opinion on staircases, please leave us a comment.
This is going to be our poll. What's your favorite kind of staircase?
Please leave a comment at Hogwarts of Pod. Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, find us. Let's move on to Act 2, Scene 13. It's Harry and Ginny Potter's house inside their kitchen. This, as opposed to the last scene, is actually quite consequential in a lot of different things. But we have, obviously, Harry and Ginny watching each other closely as a fight might be impending soon, which is an interesting comment from, I guess, the narrator on that. But Harry is convinced that this is the right decision, and he needed to be honest with himself and listen to his heart. And Ginny, looking at him, says, "I can't believe that your heart told you to do this." And then there's a knock on the door, and we get a certain character entering. Jen's favorite, Draco Malfoy.
Yay.
I feel like the enthusiasm for Myrtle was a little higher than the enthusiasm
I would
for
say
Draco.
that's fair.
This is an interesting Draco that we get, so we're going to get into that in a second. But Draco says immediately that he's not here to antagonize Harry, but he's here on behalf of his son, who is in tears. And he questions Harry on why he would separate two good friends. And then this little back and forth goes on between Harry and Draco. Harry says, "I'm not keeping them apart." And Draco says, "You've literally threatened both teachers and Albus." And Harry tells Draco of Bane's thoughts on the darkness surrounding Albus. And Draco is unsure what Harry is trying to imply. And then Harry asks Draco very bluntly if Scorpius really is his son. Wow.
Yeah.
What do we think of this little back and forth? Before we get to Draco's reaction to such a bold question, what do we think of this little back and forth?
It's certainly bold. So it cuts right to the chase.
It's very bold, but points to Draco for showing up at his childhood enemy's house in defense of his son, putting all that aside, saying he's not there to antagonize him, but he is there to try to understand what is going on because he doesn't want to see his son miserable.
He said his son's in tears.
Yeah, no, that's super sad. I'm totally on Draco's side in this scene.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think we're all on Draco's side in this.
It's a weird feeling.
It's a little weird.
He even said how they are two good friends. Like, he is accepting and acknowledging that his son has become best friends with Harry Potter's son. That takes a lot, I think, for him to do that. So I give him props.
Yeah,
I think it's a really nice choice for Draco to come here and put his stuff aside for his son's well-being.
Yes.
And I think it's well within his rights as a father, not to come here and take it. There are plenty of parents that this would be like a throwdown.
Yes, there are.
But he's not here in an antagonizing fashion. He's literally here to have a conversation and ask a valid question of like, hey, you've literally made my son miserable with your actions. Why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
So I think Draco's well within his rights here. As to what Draco thinks about Harry's question about Scorpius' true father, stunningly, Draco's not a fan of that question and reacts very poorly to this, taking out his wand. And I feel like the power dynamic in this interaction is different to anything we've seen previously. I feel like the breakdown and how we've already seen Draco react and how he reacts through this little interaction before they actually start dueling puts Draco in a much more subservient role to Harry, and Harry is clearly the dominant factor. He's clearly the superior person in this situation.
Okay.
Is how I read it, to where Harry's like, hey, look, Draco, why are you doing this? I don't want to hurt you, man. I've always viewed them as fairly equal as far as magical power and their ability to duel. Draco's certainly never stepped aside. He's always stepped up to Harry as far as wanting a duel or wanting to get a shot in. And here he seems a little reluctant, only brought out by that accusation. Mm-hmm. Whereas Harry's like, man, don't even try me. You know you can't beat me. And Draco's kind of like, I get the vibe he's a little hesitant in this.
I always just took that as Harry's bravado.
Maybe. I mean, we've seen some personality changes, and he's certainly become a lot more assertive and confident in the way he's dealing with things. But I don't know. This power dynamic, to me, I was like, whoa, this doesn't seem like the Draco Malfoy that we know either.
I think the biggest change in this, I didn't notice as much of a change for Harry himself. I feel like Harry kind of still acts in line with what I would expect him to. Even the line that says, I don't want to hurt you, Draco, because I feel like that's just Harry having some bravado. Draco is who surprises me in this scene, because I feel like if this were them back at Hogwarts, he would be dispensing a lot more insults, a lot more threats, and Draco's kind of almost trying to problem solve first and fight second. Harry just seems like, I'm not trying to solve anything, I'll fight you. So it's just an interesting dynamic, because to me for this, it feels like Draco has matured more. I don't necessarily see the passivity here. I see the love for his son being the thing that changed him the most. And that he is putting a priority on his son in this, which is leading him to take the more mature route of trying to resolve the conflict first before going into fighting. Also, to your point, the maturity of Draco was what I wanted out of this. So, this is a nice thing to see. Yeah,
no, I get you. Interestingly enough, as Julie would love, they both end up using the same spell, Expelliarmus, to start this whole thing off.
I love this because this also underscores what I'm saying I'm taking this as another example of Draco's matured. He's taking the less aggressive approach. And again, Expelliarmus is very in line with what we would expect Harry. I don't see much change in Harry in this scene, but this is a huge thing from Draco that he's not immediately taking the aggressive.
I kind of took it a little differently. To me, it honestly reminded me of like playing rock, paper, scissors with somebody, and you know that the person is always going to start with one of the things, so you just fight immediately back with the same thing. So I'm wondering if it's like, did he use Expelliarmus because he has mellowed in age, or was it because he knows it's Harry's favorite spell, and he's like, well, I'm going to counter that? Or was it because he's seen that it actually is powerful and effective, because it did defeat Voldemort? So is it like a combination of the three, or is it one in particular? But it is funny that they both use Expelliarmus.
If we go with your last suggestion of saying, well, he realized that it was a better spell to start duels with, or a more powerful spell to duel with, he's still showing some level of maturity in that, because I feel like the Draco that we know from the original timeline in the books would have been too arrogant to
use it,
admit that someone else had a better strategy and adapt to that strategy.
Yeah.
I like the use of Expelliarmus mainly because I think it's genuinely true that each adult in this situation does not actually want to harm the other. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a clear indication that their first spell, like we see in book 6, the first spell that they both use is to do real intended harm to each other. Mm-hmm. Yes. This one is, hey, let's put the wands aside, even if they're flung out of each other's hands, and let's figure this out. The spells do increase from there, though, however. Draco ends up using Incarcerus, Densagio, Flipendo, Emancipare, Levicorpus, Mobilicorpus. Those are, obviously, Incarcerus is more of the ropes that bind. Densagio, if you have forgotten that one, that's the teeth elongating spell, which I feel like is an odd one to pull out here, but sure, why not? Flipendo flips you around. Emancipare he uses actually as a response to one of Harry's spells to actually free himself. Levicorpus we're obviously very familiar with, and Mobilicorpus, obviously you're moving the body. Harry uses Tarantulagra, Rictusempra, Brachiobindo, and Obscuro. They're pretty straightforward. Tarantulagra is the dancing legs one. Brachiobindo is the one that Draco emancipates from because it's binding the body together, and Obscuro is the darkness. Rictusempra was a big one from one of the dueling clubs.
I think it was a laughing spell, right? It was like hit you with a punch of like laughter, kind of.
Always laughing. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. So
that's another weird one.
It's another weird one. So you get the teeth elongating one, and you get the constant laughter one, which I suppose both would technically be debilitating.
Yeah. I will say watching this on the stage was also kind of fun. It was another good use of darkness. I couldn't tell at the time if it was like wire work going on to make the actors be able to flip in the air, because they did flip very slowly. So maybe it was a combination of wire work and people in like black suits helping them maneuver and flip in the air, because it was also kind of like, if I remember correctly, I think they added like you freeze, kind of like there was like some kind of like freezing spell or something. But I remember like the chair moving around in the air. Every time they shot a spell at each other, there was like a little mini burst, like a firework kind of a thing. This scene just, to me, it feels like they mostly did this scene just for the sake of being able to do the magic on the stage.
I also enjoyed the scene on the stage. The thing I remember most, I guess, is the Harry throwing the chair and Draco pauses the chair in like midair.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm remembering. The freezing bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he kind of suspends it, and as he's suspending it in midair, whether he's about to drop it or whether he's about to swing it back at Harry, Ginny then re-enters after about being away for 3 minutes. She's been out of the room for literally 3 minutes, and she's like, "I'm sorry, what?" And then the scene ends.
It reminds me, if you have ever seen that clip from Community, the TV show, where like he goes out to get the pizza and comes back and the whole place is like on fire and there's total chaos, and he's like, "What did I miss?" It's like Ginny right now.
Love it.
If I were Ginny, I would not be happy with these two. Mm-hmm. But I also wouldn't be surprised either if you left Harry and Draco in a room for 3 minutes and they didn't get a little heated with each other. But it's a very interesting interaction that we are not done with. So we will circle back on this interesting trio of Harry, Ginny, and Draco in part 2 of this episode. We are going to take a little break, but like I said, leave us your comments on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You can find us all at Hogwarts Pod. Give us that 5-star review on Spotify. You can also participate in the polls that we have up on Spotify. All of that helps grow the podcast and get it out to all of you better and more efficiently. So if you could do that, that'd be great. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back with part 2. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlet.
The Hilton sale is on. For 10 days only, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Don't wait. The sale ends September 29th. Book your stay and save at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton, for the stay.
I love magic.
All right, so we are back with part 2, and we are covering Act 2, Scene 14, and I know everybody is looking forward to more Staircase Talk. Yeah. Welcome to Staircase Talk with Hogwarts, a podcast. We have Elizabeth, Jenn, and I am your host, Dan. And today we are talking about a staircase talk involving Delphi and Scorpius.
And feelings.
So many feelings. And owling. Yes, people are owling each other, and apparently Albus has owled Delphi. But first, before that, Delphi says that she has never actually been to Hogwarts before. This is her first time. She comments on, 1, the lack of security, the number of portraits that there are, the number of ghosts that there are, and just the number of corridors that there are. She is amazed by everything. And as people that have played Hogwarts Legacy, I concur. There are a lot of portraits, there are a lot of corridors, and it's awesome.
I've played Hogwarts Legacy 2.5 times, and I still do not know how to navigate the castle.
It is a really cool place. The lack of security, though, is quite hilarious.
Yeah.
Because I know you've also commented, Elizabeth, on there being a general sense of a lack of security, both at the Ministry of Magic, and now we're getting it at Hogwarts, so it's a different era that we're living
Coming
in.
after a war that was so large, you would think that they would learn from that and keep some permanent security changes, but I guess not.
She blames being ill as a child for her absence from Hogwarts. But as I said, apparently Albus has been owling Delphi. And Delphi says that history has obviously changed, but not enough. Cedric became more determined after his first task failure, and still ultimately died during the Triwizard Tournament. It's interesting that Cedric kind of has that response. It's like, man, screwed up that first task. I don't think it was my fault. I think something happened to me. Well, I'm going to show them. Which, again, makes me want to see that second task and be like, what did Cedric come out with for that second task to be like, oh, I'm going to make up for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Here's what I'm going to do. So it's kind of interesting to kind of play that out in your head.
I have a question with this scene, though, because what struck out to me, Delphi didn't actually go back in time.
Correct.
So wouldn't you think that her being in the present time would have also changed and not be aware that time had been changed?
It's an interesting loophole.
Yeah.
Unless she has a way to be immune from it somehow.
Maybe.
Pull herself out of time in some way.
Yeah, because, I mean, like, you would think, like, she shouldn't be able to know that what we did in the past wasn't enough to change the history enough to save Cedric. Like, she should be unaware about anything if she didn't go back with it. So, unless she also time traveled and we just are unaware of it, or something else is going on.
Yeah, I thought that when I was reading this, where it doesn't quite make sense that she's aware of this. And the way that she describes it, where she says something about her being there could ruin the whole operation. Mm-hmm. So she's definitely the Delphi from the original timeline. Mm-hmm. But we don't have a full explanation of how she's here. Like, from all of what we know so far about time turners, I don't think that she should be here.
And also, where has she been? Because we saw her stay in the woods, and then they changed time, and then clearly they've been at school for a few weeks, I'd take a guess at this point, and she never sought them out. She just, went home and researched Cedric Diggory? Question mark? Like, I don't know what she's been up to.
Right? Has she been in this timeline? Is she just popping in on this?
Or has she been hiding in the Forbidden Forest, and that's how she was able to do lax security, because she never technically left?
So, Albus has been sending her owls.
Mm-hmm. Texting.
So
Wizard texting.
Wizard texting. So how... Okay, now I'm just envisioning an owl dropping off a letter and it just says, you up. So he's known about this. So how long has she been there?
That's what I'm wondering.
Is right. That's a really good question.
I mean, if she's still on the campus grounds, then maybe that's why they're able to owl so much, because the owl's like, I don't have to go very far. I can deliver your message very quickly.
Is it like Owl Uber, where it's like, oh, it's not too far. I got this one, guys.
No, I just owl shows up, really, really big piece of parchment. Okay.
Worth the postage.
Yep.
Delphi says that while the plan for Cedric was not accomplished, Cedric can wait for a second. We gotta fix you and Albus. You two seem a little off. And Scorpius says he's tried to speak with Albus, but Albus runs off every single time. Delphi says she's never had a best friend, only an invented one. And Scorpius, again, identifies with Delphi and interjects about his invented friend Flurry, and they're falling out over the rules of gobstones. And Delphi looks at him and says, Albus needs you. Find him. Aside from all the questions we have about Delphi here, this is another moment that you get with Scorpius that you just find yourself more and more endeared to his character, I think. Mm-hmm. I love the interjection and the detail with which he goes into his imaginary friendship with Flurry and their... How do you fall out with an imaginary friend?
I love that line so much.
You have an imaginary fight.
And then you fall out, so you never resolve that.
Yeah.
It is a imaginary
you have
friendship
left
ending
yourself
event.
on red. What actually endeared me even more about Scorpius was he said how it sounded like Albus had a shoulder to cry on with Delphi, considering how many owls he has sent her. And I hinted at that tinge of jealousy that she also obviously got, because she just smiled in response to him, and he immediately apologizes for it. So I think it's like he recognizes, oh, I'm hurting, and I didn't mean to take out my anger on you. It's not your fault. It's just like I miss my friend. And I think the fact that he's able to show that humanity and then auto-correct himself and like still apologize for it is really sweet of him.
I think that's a great point, and I think that also it shows a lot of emotional maturity on Scorpius's part, which is interesting because he has to have learned that from someone. So I'm just saying, maybe, they are emotionally aware at the Malfoy manor.
It's very interesting that you allude to Draco and Scorpius's relationship at home, because as we transition to our next scene, Act 2, Scene 15, we get Harry and Ginny's house again, and we're again in the kitchen. This is immediately after the events that we left our part 1 in, where it's moments after the duel between the two.
I like that in this span of time, what she has done is separated the two of them to opposite sides of the kitchen. Like, you have your corner, you have yours, go there.
Ginny plays mediator here, for sure. Draco, interestingly, apologizes to Ginny about the state of her kitchen. And Ginny, also interestingly, that she has to note this, goes, "It's not my kitchen. Harry actually does the cooking." Which I just think is an interesting line.
It's so random.
Mm-hmm.
Very random. I don't know that I
Harry
needed that detail.
has never given us the, like...
Well, he did the cooking at the Dursleys because he was forced to.
I mean, he did some cooking when they were camping, but he's never given us the impression that he enjoys it. It's just like a thing.
Yeah, that's fair. To your point about Draco and Scorpius' relationship, Draco does delve quite deep, and he's very open about his relationship with his son, as he reveals that he's had difficulty talking to Scorpius at home, especially since his wife Astoria had passed away. He acknowledges that this must be a tough thing for Scorpius to have to live through, have to go through, but he can't talk to him. And then he says to Harry, well, you can't talk to Albus. So here we are, both fathers, both having issues communicating with our sons over some difficult topics. And then he turns it on Harry and says, you, of all people, should know the power of friendship. He amps it up another notch by saying, I've always envied you. Them. Weasley and Granger. I had... And Ginny finishes the sentence for him. You had Crabbe and Goyle. And Draco goes, yep. 2 lunks. You, the 3 of you, shone, which is an interesting word, shone. You liked each other. You had fun. I envied those friendships. Ginny chips in with, I envied them too. And Harry, surprised by Ginny's comment, says, I need to protect him.
It's interesting you read, like, you had Crabbe and Goyle in that way, because when I read it, I took it more as, like, you had Crabbe and Goyle, like, you had friends. And it was like, yeah, 2 lunks who would know one end of a broomstick from another. Like, just the tone that you have when saying that could either be like, yes, you had friends, I'm reminding you, or, oh, yeah, you had those 2. They sucked. Like,
no, so that's definitely the way I'm reading it. I'm reading it as Ginny putting down Crabbe and Goyle, because it's like, you were clearly different. I think we can all acknowledge in the books, there's Draco Malfoy on, like, tier 1, and then Crabbe and Goyle are, like, down a notch or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5.
Several.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just Ginny that noticed it. I think everybody noticed that Crabbe and Goyle are not exactly on his level. And so I read it as Ginny saying, like, yeah, Harry had Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, and you had Crabbe and Goyle.
Yeah, see, I didn't read it like that. I read it as, like, hey, you weren't alone. You did have friends. Like, why were you envious of Harry, Ron, and Hermione? And that's when he's like, yeah, because the guys I was stuck with were idiots. Whereas the Golden Trio, you were literally shining like the Golden Trio that you were. So I took it as, like, yeah, I've been jealous of that friendship because mine just didn't measure up.
I read it the same way that Dan read it, where it was more of a commiserating comment than it was a, like, trying to remind Draco that he, like, had people. But what I think is really interesting about this scene for me is just it feels like Draco... We're finally in a scene where Draco is admitting something that I feel like was hinted at throughout the series. I do think Draco was envious of the 3 of them. I think it would have been nice to have this revelation
sooner.
A lot sooner than this. But, like, okay, fine, I'll take it. But I think it's interesting because, so the apology at the beginning of the scene, him opening up about not being able to talk to Scorpius. So one of the things that I wanted to comment on with that is just that Scorpius clearly has emotional intelligence. I think that Draco is showing a lot of maturity in being able to apologize, being able to open up about these things, admitting he's being vulnerable with Harry, which historically that has just never even been an option. Even though he's not able to reach Scorpius about this grief over Draco losing his wife, Scorpius losing his mother, that doesn't necessarily mean that their relationship is bad. It just means that in this moment, there's this unspoken thing between them, and that's more of like the all-consuming thing. But you can still have a good parental relationship with someone, even if there are things that you can't talk to them about. So I just wanted to, in my mind, it doesn't mean that, like, I don't think that their relationship is antagonistic in the same way that Harry's relationship with Albus kind of skews antagonistic. But I really just have to give Draco a lot of credit in this scene. I think he's being very vulnerable. I think he's being very mature with handling all of this. And I also just really think that this is a kind of a core point that the play is trying to get across, that this is a play about friendship and about why friendships matter. And I think this scene is a really good illustration of that point.
I agree. And you gave a lot of great adjectives about how Draco is handling himself here. And I want to add one to that. And it's one that we don't normally associate with Slytherin. And that is, I think he's being quite courageous and brave here.
Yeah.
Because I think being emotionally vulnerable has a lot of connotations to it, and most of them are negative, especially when you're talking about a male perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think the courage that he has to vocalize those concerns that he has about his son over a already sensitive topic of his wife's passing, he's like doubling down on these emotional vulnerabilities. And I think it's something that needs to be applauded from Draco, that he's willing to go out on that limb and put himself out there. To be fair to Harry, and this is, again, a different version of Harry and a different version of Draco, so we do have to also take that into account. However, Harry, the real one from our timeline, also had a moment in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child when he voiced his mistake with Albus to Draco. Mm-hmm. When he actually said, yeah, I said something I shouldn't have said. Here's what he said. And Draco's in the room and he's listening to that. And that's a moment of vulnerability from Harry, who, that is the childhood rival 100%. That is the real two people in the, I guess, prime timeline, whatever you want to call it. And he was being emotionally vulnerable there as well by detailing the fallout that he had with his son. So I find it very interesting that this play has had Draco and Harry both explore some of those more vulnerable sides to them in very touching, personal topics and ways. I think it's just a really interesting thing, and I wanted to tag Draco in this as, yeah, I think it is a little bit more brave and courageous from him to put it all out there. He doesn't stop there either. He doubles down again. After Harry said he was surprised by Ginny's comment, well, which we haven't even talked about. What do you feel about Ginny's comment there?
I think that's really interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that from her. I think maybe in the first, 4 books, I could buy that. But then I think she kind of gets she gets more comfortable in her own skin. She gets her own group of friends. She has her own people. So that's interesting that I guess maybe she's just remembering the earlier times, maybe.
I mean, she said, Harry talked about her popularity, so she obviously had friends. I wonder if it was just she didn't have as close friends. I could see her just being I have a lot of people who like me, but I see them kind of as surface level friends. I don't have, it's quantity over quality.
Well, here's what I think the common ground is between Ginny and Draco, which is, I think, drastically unexplored. You hit on it. Ginny was very popular. So was Draco. Draco was well known and well liked, especially in his own house. Mm-hmm. Very popular. But as Draco just alluded to, I didn't really have friends. A lot of people knew me. They wanted to be around me.
Or they feared my family.
Or they feared me. But I never really felt like they were really my friends. And Ginny could feel the same way. Yeah, people thought I was pretty. People thought I was talented. People thought I was X, Y, or Z. But I don't really feel like I had friends. At least her age. And this is the question I'll throw out to you guys. I always, in my head, lump Ginny in with Luna and Neville. Mm-hmm. Like that.
The Silver Trio?
Yeah, exactly. That, for the lack of a better term, because it's an unfair term, but for the lack of a better term, that second tier trio.
Mm-hmm.
However, Neville is Harry's ear. Mm-hmm. And I guess I would always associate Neville more with Harry.
Yeah.
And being with Harry. So I guess you could loop it with Ginny and Luna.
I do associate the two of them together, even if you don't see them together as much. Just the way Ginny defends Luna so much, and how Luna is yeah, Ginny's my friend. I can be me around her and trust that she's not going to be mocking me as much.
I could see that being hard though when Hogwarts is so structured by house.
Segregation?
That if the person that you are friends with or do connect with on some level, if she does feel like she connects with Luna, that's going to be a different type of friendship than having your core group be in the same house and your classes.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. And you can see that play out in other friendships in different ways. You see it play out with Snape and Lily as they grow apart, being in Slytherin and Gryffindor. The Sorting Hat always says, it's supposed to be unified. But it like you were saying, Jen, it very much not.
Right.
And I don't know if that's changed after the Battle of Hogwarts. We don't really get a sense one way or the other fully. So Draco doubles down on his emotional vulnerability and his sharing by speaking about his father. So Harry said, I need to protect my son. Draco says, well, my father thought he was protecting me. He continues, most of the time, I think you have to make a choice at a certain point of the man you want to be. And I tell you that at that time, you need a parent or a friend. And if you've learned to hate your parent by then, and you have no friends, then you're all alone. And being alone, that's so hard. I was alone. And it sent me to a truly dark place. For a long time. Tom Riddle was also a lonely child. You may not understand that, Harry, but I do. And I think Ginny does too. And Ginny goes, he's right. So, I think that's an interesting kind of admission and a kind of self-analysis from Draco. And it kind of alludes back to the Crabbe and Goyle comment where it's like, yes, I had quote-unquote friends. People knew me. But did they really? Did I really like them? Did I really feel myself around them or my parents? And I think it's a really vulnerable admission that Draco makes here.
It honestly, to me, sounds like Draco's been doing some wizard therapy. That's a lot of introspection, and it's spot on, and I think it's also fair for him to say all of that. And it also is something that Harry should be able to easily understand because he does have a previous hatred of Lucius Malfoy, so being able to hear Draco try to humanize that a little bit, but also pointing out that, like, look, my dad thought that he was protecting me, and he did a lot of really bad things. I think Harry can not relate to it because Harry, didn't actually.
It's different, but it's similar.
But he can get it just because I think he also saw how Lucius Malfoy's actions were negative. Draco putting that spin on it also might help something click in Harry's head of, oh, well, Lucius did care for Draco. These were bad actions to take. Oh, I don't want to be that guy. Right? Like, that's a fairly clear thing I think that Harry can pick up on. What I thought was interesting, and like the Tom Riddle analogy, also fair. Tom Riddle was a lonely kid. Understandable. The interesting thing here, for me reading this, is, so I think that Ginny, when he says I think Ginny does too, and Ginny says he's right. So I understand that from the Ginny was maybe popular and didn't have a lot of deeper connections with kids and was envious of the trio. But that's kind of, it's interesting that Draco takes it a step further in saying, if you don't have a parent and you don't have friends, you're in a lonely place. Tom Riddle was there, and I think Ginny gets it. Why does he... So from a superficial level, I think it's a fairly simple concept. Maybe that's what he's referring to, but it's a little bit weird that for him and Tom Riddle's example, they didn't have a parent or a friend. When we know Ginny's parents. We've had many exposures to Ginny's parents. Right, so where's the... So it's just an interesting... I don't get that vibe from Ginny.
I still go back to my theory that these characters are just supposed to be the antithesis of their previous selves. Because as much as I love Draco's redemption arc, and I know at the beginning of the first timeline he was starting to have, like, elements of vulnerability as being a father and trying to grapple with what that means and what that entails. I think now, instead of being the bully, it's the exact opposite. I'm going to be the emotionally vulnerable person. Instead of Ginny being the popular, confident person, it's, yes, I too am lonely, and I too get what it's like to not be, like, admired and loved. And it's like, well, that's not true about Ginny. Like, we know that she was loved by her parents, by her family members,
very much
people
so.
at school.
Right.
So much so that we had that famous quote, right? So, like, it just strikes
almost
me...
to a fault, because Ron felt overlooked by Ginny.
Exactly.
Wasn't the implication that not that she
Molly
was the
wasn't
favorite,
happy
but
until
that
she got
had
a girl.
Right.
Yeah. So it just seems to me like the writers were like, okay, what is the character trait that is most prominent in these characters in the series. Let's find the exact opposite and make it like an upside down version of themselves. And then that is to most show the fact that time has been changing.
I think that Ginny could have felt those things in the prime timeline. Maybe not the family stuff is set that aside because that makes the least sense.
Yeah, that's the part
The friends thing could make sense. You could spin that argument to have that make total sense. I think maybe in this timeline, we know Ginny's different. And it goes back to the first time you saw her in this new timeline when the narrator's like, she seems unsure of herself. Mm-hmm. She seems kind of quiet and meek and timid. That's not Ginny.
Yeah.
That's not our version of Ginny. So that immediately set the bar for like, okay, this is a little bit different version. And I'm assuming in this timeline, the only thing that could make sense with the parents thing is because she's the only girl, maybe she got isolated for that instead. Like maybe it was the reverse. Like you have so many domineering personalities on the boys that they take all of the shine. And maybe she gets stuff to the side because she's the only girl. I can't clearly pin out anything to make that real, but that's just me projecting.
The only other thing that I thought of that could maybe fit into being in a dark place and being isolated was just in Chamber of Secrets when she's dealing with the diary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's the only other really isolated time that we see her.
Yeah. Really interesting insights from Draco. And also, he's not done with the insights. He's dropping some wisdom on this. He's commenting on the thoughts that Bane had. And Draco says, maybe the black cloud Bane saw was Albus's loneliness, his pain, his hatred. Don't lose the boy, you'll regret it. And so will he. He needs you. And Scorpius. Harry looks at Draco, about to speak, but thinks instead. Ginny steps up and says, will you get the flu powder, or shall I? And that's how that scene ends. And to your point, Jen, about Draco clearly seeing a wizard therapist, I think this is straight out of the wizard therapist playbook.
Yep, very reflective.
I think it's accurate, and I think it's a really good interpretation of Bane's more vague prediction, or whatever you want to call it. I really like this Draco.
Draco can't stop, won't stop.
Also, I said, obviously Draco is Slytherin. And I've already called him courageous and brave in this, and I just called that comment wise. So just in this, and he's being a friend.
Mm-hmm. And humble about his past self.
And humble and putting things aside. And I think he's literally displaying all of the other characteristics of all three other houses here.
Yeah.
Other than a Slytherin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of interesting to note that as well from Draco. Also, that we've always, from the get-go, said on this podcast, it's foolish to think one person is one group of characteristics. Everybody's got a little bit of everything in them. So here's Draco showing you that that's true, I think.
Yeah, if that's a lesson to take away from Hogwarts, like, you have all the house qualities in yourself. You just have to age enough to find them, discover them for yourself.
So, clearly, as we've gone through scenes 11 through 15 here, we've focused heavily, especially at the end, on one Draco Malfoy. And I must turn to our resident Slytherin for her summation of Draco Malfoy in these scenes. What do we think? What do we think about Draco?
A+. A+ Draco. No, I think Draco handles it really well. He's vulnerable, like we talked about. I like that you're characterizing it as courageous. I like that he's dropping wisdom in this last scene. He is very humble about his past life. So I feel like he's doing a really good job of showing what a redemption arc could have looked like for Draco. I think my only point of sadness is just that it didn't come sooner, but this was a similar path of what I had kind of hoped that his whole arc in the original 7 books would have looked like, but it's better late than never. I will take it. I'm happy for some positive Slytherin representation. But one of the things here too is that he's still being a Slytherin in all of this. And I think that maybe it's just changed a little bit from... Slytherins are very heavily focused on self-preservation. And I think in this instance, he's actually trying to apply the self-preservation to his family instead of just to him. It's now him and his son. And they're characterized by also being like resourceful and cunning and determined and all of that. So like cunning, maybe not so much because cunning has a negative connotation to it, but a lot of the things that he's displaying in here, he is displaying courage for being vulnerable, he is being humble, he is being wise, but he is also still focused on a preservation of his family. He's just displaying it in a way that's not toxic. And it's also really nice to just see some Slytherin traits being portrayed in a positive way, because for so long, most of the time when we see Slytherin traits, we're used to associating them with something negative. But this is a great example of he's trying to preserve his family, and that's technically Slytherin.
I agree that it's disappointing in a way that this comes in an alternate reality version of Draco. However, I will also say that I think our prime timeline Draco, I think he feels a lot of these things. And I think he thinks a lot of these things. I think he believes a lot of these things. But I think our original version of Draco, the thing that gets in his way is still, I think he's got a little bit too much self-pride and pride in his family, and he can't show that vulnerability, he can't show that weakness because it's still ingrained in him that we have to show a front.
Yeah.
And that's the only difference. And I think that's like to me, the difference between the original Draco and this version of Draco is one has just shed all of that and like accepted it, acknowledged it for whatever reason, and become a little bit more passive and less aggressive with being himself.
100%. And that was also why I like this version of Draco the most. And that's also why I was the most disappointed in book 7 Draco, because I understand 1 through 4 when, his father is still in his ear and they're talking about the Malfoy name and all of the, grandiosity that's associated with the Malfoy name. When Lucius Malfoy messes up in book 5 and then starts getting punished by Voldemort in 6 and 7, and he's starting to see a little bit of the fracture there, where like, okay, his name doesn't mean as much anymore, it's whatever. I wish that there would have been this Draco emerging where that is the realization that he has of, okay, my dad presented things in a way where, there's so much prestige in our name, there's so much whatever, and he led me to be very prideful of the family, but now look at where his choices have gotten us. Like, look at he did these things for the family, did these things for the cause, whatever, he messed up, he's getting punished. Maybe what he's saying isn't actually what it should be. Maybe I shouldn't have this unfounded pride in the family because look at how far my dad has fallen. Like, I wish that 6 and 7 had explored a little bit more of that. Like, I wish that what had happened to Malfoy had humbled him a bit and had led him down this path so that we could have seen glimpses of this Draco in the original timeline.
I think he's so close. I think our original Draco will do, like, going back to the thing about Scorpius, I think he'll say, like, our original Draco would say, hey, it's been really tough since Astoria passed. And that's where he would stop.
Yeah.
He wouldn't admit to and I can't talk to Scorpius about that. And he wouldn't admit that detail, and then he wouldn't continue from there. He would stop it after, like, the first admission, which still is growth for Draco.
It is. I would still give him credit for that. That's a good first step.
It's just not all the way there.
Right.
So, I mean, you're seeing signs and you're seeing glimpses, even in our original Draco. Yeah. So, it's really interesting. I think these scenes are very, very interesting to kind of break down all of those relationships.
I think also to your point that original Draco most likely thought and felt some of these things. I also agree with you on that because I think that a lot of the descriptors around Draco's actions in 6 and 7 did hint that he was having some of these thoughts. I just wish that it had been expressed. Not even this direct, like this verbosely, but just some level before.
We can go into a whole deep dive through the original books and look at it through a whole new lens of every interaction Draco has where Crabbe and Goyle are involved. Mm-hmm. And just through this older Draco's lens, looking at him like, yeah, I don't like anything about this. Like, I don't like my life. I don't like these people. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to be this. I have to put on maybe an act of sorts. And maybe when he was younger, he believed it.
Yeah.
And as he got older in that 6 and 7 period, he started to almost doubt that act a little bit. He's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I don't like this. And it would be interesting to kind of review everything through that lens, I think.
We could also go through and highlight all of the times that he makes comments that are clearly indicative of the fact that he is jealous of Harry and his friends.
Yeah.
Which is almost like 80% of what he says.
Yeah.
So, like, this Draco does ring very true, and it's just...
Draco's a very nuanced character.
He is,
always
and that's
has
why
been.
he is so fascinating, but that's also why it's so sad that they didn't delve more into this nuance. There was so much
She
opportunity to.
The author even says Draco's one of her favorite characters.
Yeah, I wish that had been... I wish he'd been explored in so much more depth.
Yeah.
I digress.
Well, we do have a what-if scenario, so...
I know, that makes me happy. I am, as a Slytherin, this whole episode has made me very happy.
And that's why I wanted your thoughts on this. So now I want all of our listeners' thoughts on what we've talked about. So if you could just comment on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, you could leave a comment there. You can find all of our socials at HogwartsAPod. And please participate in the polls that we put on Spotify as well. They're always super, super interesting. One of the recent ones we put up there was if you could go back in time to an event in the Harry Potter Wizarding World universe, which event would you go back to? And there's some interesting options that I have put on the poll. There's also one that I left off, which I regret now looking at it, but that's obviously the Quidditch World Cup would be a really cool experience to go to. So let us know what you think on that, and we'll talk about all those polls in a future episode, so stay tuned. With that, we will wrap it up. And we will be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HogwartsAPod.